Sorry.
Yeah,
Thanks,
so just on the Meldrum Path group, we've been interacting with them. We've got another meeting with them on Monday, along with the people from Huntley and a group from Ellen. The Meldrum Path group were trying to engage with landowners between Inverurie and Old Meldrum to establish a path along the old railway line. But there's been some difficulties with that. Landowners aren't all on board with it for various understandable reasons. So there are moves to try and resolve that. But it does look as if there is some movement on the stretch between Lethenty and Inverurie, which would be good for us because it means we could then walk or bike to Inverurie without having to go on any of those dangerous roads. And that's kind of where we are at the moment.
Cheers, Ken. Yeah. So I don't know if we want to hand over to Natalie. If Natalie wants to tell us about what she's been doing, that'd be all right now. You're on mute. I don't know if that's deliberate, Natalie, while you're swearing at the computer.
Sorry. Computers and I never agree. Can you see the PowerPoint presentation?
Not yet, no.
Oh, that's okay. It popped up and share screen. Apologies, guys. Technical.
This did work earlier when we took. There we go. Yeah, you got it.
Okay, and then do that. Okay, yay! Right. Okay, so as the Zero Carbon Davert Constitution says, we want to engage with schools and encourage the children. So what we did was create a survey, and the staff at Davert School very kindly put it online onto the Google Classroom feed. And it was basically to assess the basic awareness, actions that the kids are already doing and their ideas on climate change. So we got a 25% response rate. So that's 26 responses out of 104 pupils, which is a little bit disappointing. I was hoping for more, but it does tend to get lost in the stream. So I can understand why it was so low. However, we did receive a response from at least every year. The majority was from primary 6 and 7, and then from primary 5 and 3. So we asked them, have you heard of climate change? And only 2 children hadn't heard of it, and they were in P1 and P2. Then we asked them, sorry, do you understand what climate change means? So 62% said yes, they were confident, or they thought they understood what it meant. And 38% were not sure or would like to know more. What was interesting was that the response for I'm not sure and I would like to know more was scattered throughout the year groups. So then we went on and asked, when you hear the words climate change, does it make you feel hopeful that we can stop it, worried or not sure? So 50% were not sure how they felt about it. 31% though were hopeful that we can stop it. And there was 19% that felt worried about climate change. Then we gave them a choice of 5 things that they could already be doing and asked them if they were currently doing that at the time. So 85% said they currently reuse, recycle and regift. Then 73% try not to waste food. 62% say they wear a jumper instead of turning the heating up. 54% said they walk or cycle to school. And 31% say that they say no to buying more stuff when they can. Now, we gave them an option as well of other things that they do that we hadn't included in that list. We got 6 responses to that. The responses were stop and recycle, use bars of soap and shampoo instead of bottles, looking after bugs, bees and birds in my garden, turning off lights to save electric, collect litter when I can. One wrote a letter to David Attenborough and they have stopped using Nutella as it contains palm oil. They compost our food waste and turn off the lights. Now, the final question, we asked them, what can Davet do to help climate change, to help stop climate change? So looking through all their responses, they fell into roughly 5 categories. So the first 3, education, biodiversity, and resources. So as you can see with the education, that was again around climate literacy and getting people to understand what it is and what they can do. And somebody started to talk about possibly working outside, which I think they meant was going into greener jobs, going into jobs centered around helping the environment. Then biodiversity was planting more wildflowers and trees. Resources, as you can see from the top part, that's mostly about preventing litter and recycling. Then we have this bottom section, which is about using less. So using less plastic, using less resources, but also what was great is somebody mentioned about getting supermarkets to stop using as much plastic. So that child was thinking not only as the community, but what can the community do to take it to the next level, which I thought was great. The other one that they'd mentioned as well was potentially using more local produce, like growing vegetables and fruit. The next 2 sections were transport and energy. So they mentioned about driving less, using the car less, or using it more efficiently, about electric cars, so heading towards using electric cars instead, and walking or cycling instead of using a car. Then a couple of people mentioned about wind turbines, and a couple of people mentioned about solar panels, and someone said about trying to use less heating. There was only 2 responses of I don't really understand and no idea. So that was 24 responses where they had quite a few different ideas, which I found really positive, that they had thought in lots of different areas about what they can do and what they think the community can do. So lastly, the actions that the school is already taking is that they are currently working on outdoor projects. So P1 to 3 are doing the RSPB Naturalist Award, and P4 to 7 is doing the John Muir Award. So in the wise words of Sir David Attenborough, no one will protect what they don't care about, and no one will care about what they haven't experienced. So it's fantastic that they're engaging the children in outdoor projects. They've already received 4 green flags from the Eco School programme, but their Eco School coordinator moved schools. So therefore, that sort of ground to a halt at the moment. Their journey, they haven't continued it. The school is already using their outdoor space for gardening projects this term as well. Ideas for the future, where we're thinking again, a climate literacy programme. So going in there, although they've heard of it, they're still maybe not so sure about what it totally means. So it'd be great to really solidify their understanding and help them implement all these solutions that they've started to come up with. There's potential for re-involvement in the Eco Schools programme, so continuing that journey that they've already started. Another idea potentially is a community bike bus day, which is one day where there's a set route. The adults kind of run this route and it allows the children to join in so that there's safety in numbers. It also means that we could probably find out some of the challenges that these children are facing in using their bikes or walking to school. So we would love to hear if you guys have any ideas about how to engage with the primary school, or if you've got any resources that you think would be useful. You can either say about them here, or you can contact Zero Carbon Davet through their Facebook page or the email. Or if you want to, you can just email me directly with some ideas and I can share it back to the group as well. Oh, I'm Natalie, but you've probably guessed that from the thing. And I just wanted to say thank you to the staff and teachers at Davet School for all their help, because they're in a crazy busy time and they managed to put this on for us. So we're super, super grateful. So I will shut up now. And if you've got any ideas, just give like a minute if you want to throw anything out. And I will try to stop sharing the screen and all that jazz. Okay.
That's amazing, Natalie. That is amazing. The kids get it, don't they? It's great.
Yeah. I was hoping for more responses, but you lose the actual feed in the stream really quickly. So I think we just got the older pupils because they kind of are more hot on checking all the stream bits.
Yeah.
But hopefully once we can get back into schools, I can really find out what everyone's thinking. But at least this gives us an idea for when we go in, when we're allowed to go in, of course. Did anybody have any questions? Because I talk quite fast and gesture a lot and go a bit mad. So no, everyone was okay. Excellent.
Okay, no, great work, Natalie. That's great.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, it's really brilliant, very impressive. Thank you.
I'd just like to ask as well before we go into Ken's session whether, just anyone's got any questions on the other stuff we presented there. Is there anything missing from our organogram and the likes, or any thoughts?
Was that something from Willie? No, I saw a hand. No.
Absolutely. Cool. All right, great. Thanks, guys. So yeah, Ken, over to you.
Okay. So yes, here we go. We've already started, so crack on. So what I was hoping to do here, it's all kind of a bit dry, isn't it? Electricity coming into the house, but it's really kind of important for us all to know what's happening out there, because it's going to affect all of us very, very much indeed. Possibly, the thoughts are about how we can generate electricity for ourselves, but whether we do that or not, there is a big issue with the way that we're going to be receiving electricity, and how we've got to adapt ourselves to to meeting the new ideas. So what I was going to do is just go over power distribution, which is how we get the electricity into our homes, what the technology changes are. There's also changes in the energy market which affect it all, and this of course is being driven by government policy. And then, as I said, how the changes will affect us. And big question at the bottom is, who's in control of this? You might think you are, but let's see. So, traditional power system. This is what possibly we all still think is happening. We have basically it's a linear system where we start with the power stations that generate the stuff, goes into transformers and comes down to pylons, and then it reaches the transmission substation. So this bit they call transmission, and it is quite important to know the distinction between that bit and the rest, because that's like the national grid, and it's the high voltage stuff, and it's pretty much governed by the UK government still. Then once we get past this substation, we're into distribution, which is much lower voltage, and again it drops down in transformers, and from there comes to homes and to offices and to factories. So as I say, these originally were large power stations which were oil, coal, gas and nuclear. It's very, very linear, but this is interesting because it was a fit and forget distribution system. So what would happen is that once they got to this transformer, in our case it used to be the Hydro Board, now it's Scottish and Southern Energy, they just basically fit it and they forget it. And it's just, say, a natural monopoly. So now we've got these smart decentralized grids appearing. And as you can see, there's nothing linear about this. It's just dotting about all over the place. We've still got a power plant here. We've got the industrial users here, houses all over the place, wind farms there, solar panels. It's just all a little bit kind of chaotic now, you might say, but it's bi-directional, so the power's no longer going from start to finish. It goes backwards and forwards along the wires. And what now happens is that the national grid, who look after the high voltage stuff, they have real-time management of the distribution, and they have to make sure that we don't overload it. So just to give you a bit of an idea, on the left there, we've got the national grid, which is this high voltage, which is 400,000 volts or 223,000 volts, depending. And then you'll recognize these things on the right here, which is the district network operators, or the DNOs, and that's quite interesting. We'll hear a lot about DNOs going forward, not just from me just now, but in future. And the DNOs are people like SSE up here, or Scottish Power down in the central belt. And the national grid, they want to bring energy to life. Here's hoping they do. So the technology changes, I've got 3 of them here. The first one's smart meters in homes and businesses, and they benefit the consumers and suppliers. Smart communications technology plus smart appliances can help. So, you know, you can possibly the newer freezers and washing machines will work at night when your electricity is cheaper, and possibly the grid could tell them when to switch on and off. The other technology change is this middle one here, which was driven by the need to decarbonize the grid. And so what they've done is a lot of technology now where they really monitor what is happening to electricity, and when it goes up and down, they can react to it. There's been lots of improvements in battery technology and falling prices, so there's more EVs on the road each year. So there's the smart grid, supply, two-way electricity flow, and it's invested in by the electricity companies. Oops, back. So demand changes have altered. So post-COVID, you know, we're working from home, telecommuting, as the Americans apparently call it. So we don't go anywhere, we just telecommute. And we've got changes in our lifestyle and leisure activities. TV scheduling is changing to viewing on demand. And, you know, everybody's using Zoom nowadays. We also have a greater awareness of climate change impacts, and, you know, people will choose renewable energy over fossil fuels. So here's the energy market changes. We've got these 3 things here, which is the variable energy tariffs. Now, this is the introduction of half-hourly metering. So if you have a smart meter now, the electricity company can see how much you're using every half hour, and they can change the prices according to when you're using it, if you want to go that way. And these are available to a lot of commercial customers, but there's 1 or 2 now that are starting to offer it for domestic customers. Then there's these flexibility services. Now this is also requires smart technology, and what it is, it's for power going the other way. So if you're generating electricity, it means that the consumption patterns can be varied. So you'll all have heard about wind generators being switched off and the generators still getting paid for it. Well, the reason for that is that the national grid needs to trim and to match the electricity to the flow that's going out. So flexibility services is to do with the generation. And then the aggregation of services, this is basically economies of scale by bringing together multiple small elements. So essentially, as a community, we could form we could aggregate and form a group, and we could possibly you know, get better electricity prices by being able to adjust our consumption or demand. So here's a shot from Octopus, and hopefully you can see it okay, but this is what they call a typical family home. And what we've got is the blue line is what a family would use in a day, and the red line is what the electricity would cost if you were buying it by the half hour. So it's going to be cheap for most of the day, but it's going to be expensive at midday when most of us are using it. So that basically mirrors it. If you're working 9 to 5, then you're more likely to use a bit in the morning when you're going off to work, and then nothing through the day, and then tea time it goes up again and down. So, you know, you've maybe shifted away from this bit here, so it's possibly going to be useful for you. Then you've got the night chargers. If you've got an electric vehicle and batteries, then you can fill up your boots at night with the cheap electricity, and then just run off batteries through the day. And when everybody's paying this amount of money, then you're just you're happy because you've saved it all from the night before. So this is our bill with Octopus Energy. I'm afraid I haven't got the EV on charge because I just the latest. I haven't had a bill since the end of January, and I moved to them just after Christmas there. So what you can see here, this is us. I think it's a dishwasher that went on at night, but we got some cheaply cleaned dishes. But you can see our usage is, you know, breakfast time and tea time still there. And, you know, we pay 13.77 pence per unit through the day, which is this line here. But for 4 hours in the wee small hours, that's from midnight to 4:30, we're only paying 4.76. So this is like 5 pence, including that. So the flexible services, as I mentioned, this is largely available to industry at the moment. Symantec is Siemens have done this so that factories can vary their consumption and just, you know, get the best price off the grid with this clever stuff that controls what they use, so that the factory doesn't stop, but it just smooths out their consumption from the busy times of the day. And I mentioned earlier about the wind generators turned off for payment just to balance the grid. So aggregation services, this brings economies of scale together by lots of small elements, and it will lead to a more efficient system. But the big danger is a worsening of fuel poverty, because all these things that I've mentioned already, you know, this technology for helping you get your bills down, stuff that I've shown you there that we've done, it's, you know, a lot of people aren't really going to have access to that stuff, and the benefits are just going to be available for those who are informed and can pay for it. And this is important because there was a report published just on Thursday by the Scottish government it was, and 25% of people living in Aberdeenshire are in fuel poverty. And that means that more than 10% of their income is spent on heating fuel. And even worse than that, 16% of people, that's 17,000 homes in total, are in extreme fuel poverty, where they're spending more than 20% of their income. So, you know, we really have to do something to help people in our community as well. Oops. Right. So storage heaters. Just want to mention those because we were originally on storage heaters, and our cost of heating this house was 4 times what it is now. And the story of storage heaters is quite interesting in that they were invented at the same time as nuclear power stations, because what traditionally happened with the national grid is that if you've got a coal-fired power station or a gas-fired power station, you can turn it on and off pretty much as you want to use it. But nuclear power stations, they just come on and they're on just 24/7. So the idea was, what we're going to do with this power through the night? And they said, well, we'll invent night storage heaters. And so what that did was it took the traditional consumption and just put this big lump on at night. And of course, they don't need that nowadays. So people with storage heaters are treated very badly. In fact, our last bill for storage heaters, we were paying 22 pence a unit to Scottish and Southern Energy. We couldn't get out of it because it was total heating, total control, and our storage heaters were switched on by somebody in Perth whenever they wanted to smooth out the grid. And basically we had total heating, not at all, total control, not at all. And this is one of the dangers we've got to watch going forward with these smart grids. If we go give control of our homes over to others, then, you know, the same thing could happen, because, you know, storage heaters are essentially obsolete for what they were originally intended. And, you know, if you look at fuel poverty, a lot of them have storage heaters. So what's the policy changes for the government? Well, in 2019, this draft integrated national energy climate plan was pulled together, and what it's aimed at is improving UK homes, energy efficiency, low carbon heating, delivering clean, smart and flexible power, and accelerating the shift to low carbon transport, the end of the sale of ICE vehicles. This is from Community Energy Scotland, they like acronyms. This is internal combustion engine vehicles, which is just either petrol or diesel engines. And they require all new cars and vans to be effectively zero emissions. So that's the policy, which is only just the year before last. It's taken a long time to get there. So the climate change bill was agreed last year, the emissions reduction Scotland, and this is the commits Scotland to net zero emissions by 2045. And they've kind of stuck to this strategy from 2017, but they're now getting into more finer details. HM government, they published this last month, and you'll have heard of Boris's 10-point plan. It's all in here, hundreds of pages. But essentially it's transforming energy, supporting a green recovery, and creates a fair deal for consumers. So all of these things, if the government's saying them, you just have to watch. Transforming energy, supporting and you know, this is the bit here. Hopefully this will happen. Excuse me. So the changes that are happening now is open networks. We've got the Energy Networks Association, and this Energy Network Association is deciding on the establishment of smart networks, which are transitions from, excuse me, DNOs to SNOs. So the DNO is the network operator, and it's changing to a service operator. So it will still be SSE, Scottish and Southern Energy, but the difference is instead of operating a network, they'll be operating a system. So it'll be like a mini national grid, so that they'll have to fine tune the electricity after those transformers that we saw back at the beginning there. So at the moment, you see district network organizations, they do maintenance, upgrades, and repairs. So as I said earlier, it's a kind of fit and forget thing. But a district system operator has to balance the power generated with the power demand, and that is completely new for them, but was impossible without the technology that we have now. So smart metering, well, we've got smart metering in the home here, but we didn't do it right to begin with because there was a troubled start to non-standardization. You couldn't change energy companies, and there were these things called SMETS 1 meters, which is Smart Metering Equipment Technical Specification. But now all of the meters are SMETS 2, and the difference is that SMETS 2 means that you can change your energy supplier, and they all will be able to use that meter to read your half-hourly consumption. So it allows the consumer better access to better prices, but it allows the energy companies to monitor the consumption in detail, which is interesting. So half-hourly supply, at the moment we've got Octopus and Bulb, and they can offer better rates on it. And then of course the other changes that are happening is that we're aware of is the move to biomass and heat pumps and electric vehicles. So I've mentioned the DNO to DSO transition, but there's emerging focus on renewables and less on gas and nuclear repurposing of the gas network for hydrogen. So the idea is that we are using methane in our town gas at the moment, and the hope is that we can generate hydrogen using this, instead of switching off wind generators, just use them to generate hydrogen, pop that into the gas network, and off we go. We're not going to talk about that today, but there's the technology just isn't there yet, because hydrogen leaks out of pipes. If they're not properly looked after, you need 3 times as much hydrogen as you do methane to do cooking. And the great thing is it burns with no color in the flame, so they would have to add something so that you can actually see it and not put your hand on top of it. There is also going to be a focus on energy storage to address intermittent supply. I mean, I've mentioned it already, but that's something that's going to happen. And then there's going to be this smart export guarantee to replace the feed-in tariffs. So this is not so much an incentive, but it's just to try and aggregate all this stuff that's being generated and give people something back. But whether it's fair or not is another story. So here's the risks from the coming changes. An individual level, energy cost, half-hour pricing, potential for significant extra costs. I swapped onto what they call Agile Octopus at the beginning of this month. And what was in the small print was that prices can go up as well as down. But it's all right, we are capped at 34 pence a unit. So switched me over to it, and there had been a bit of a crisis in the energy market. Prices had gone up tenfold, and the price of electricity I was being offered was from 8 o'clock in the morning, it was 34 pence. At 10 o'clock, it dropped down to 30 pence, back up again, and right the way through to 8 o'clock at night. So I don't have any battery storage, so there was no way around this for me other than pay 34 pence. So after lots of rude emails to Octopus, they switched me over to the one that I showed you earlier, which is just the 4 hours at night. So that's one of the risks with this, really. And loss of agency, as they call it, which is, again, if we do allow them to switch our heating on and off, we end up in the same situation that we did here when we had total heating, total control. Somebody else is telling us when we can switch our heating on. And then, of course, there's the privacy. I mean, this information is going out of our homes. It can tell you when, they'll know if somebody's in the house or not. Whether you're just whatever you're up to, they'll be able to, use an algorithm to take your electricity and consumption and figure out what you're doing. So there's a privacy issue there. At community level, as I mentioned before, there's the inequality because, it requires wealth, time and education. And it's possibly going to make fuel poverty even worse. At community level, this is the opportunities now. So at an individual level, here's the opportunities we've got, is that there's chance for a significant changing from smart tech adoption, okay, with notwithstanding the risks. And smart metering allows better knowledge and control of energy use. So, the suppliers can benefit from that as well. And there's a potential for income, which of course we know from the feed-in tariff that we can do it. But the new thing would be possibly using solar PV to top up the grid in the middle of the day and have flexible services for people to use that. And at a community level, which is what we're really interested in today, is that we can use this, which is what we're doing now, opportunity to enable community involvement in local energy planning. So do we want to get together and to organize a group to speak to SSE and to get better deals, because we can work with them, and this is where we would get the collective action and access these opportunities. And of course, there's potential opportunities for owning renewables if we put up some wind generators or PV panels, and also some potential for putting chargers in the village for others to use and us to charge the electricity. So that's pretty much, was it? Yeah, no, hang on. Oh, right. No, the very last thing, yes. So I mentioned earlier the Energy Networks Association is looking into the changing of the DNOs, the smart grids beyond the transformer. And it's this cozy organization called the Energy Networks Association. And then you see the members are, oh, wait a minute, Scottish and Southern Energy, Scottish Power. So the government has given the right to decide what the new network is going to be like to the people that are already running it, who may have a slightly vested interest. So there is a thing called the Community Energy Revolution, and they have launched this thing called the Local Electricity Bill, and a majority of MPs and MSPs have signed up for this, because what they want to do is to get this bill through Parliament in UK, and it's to encourage and enable the local supply of electricity. Because at the moment, if we generate electricity on our wind generators, we must sell it back to the DNOs. They have to buy it from us. I can't say, right, well, I think I've got some extra panels on the roof. I think I'll sell this to Nick and Karen at the shop because they need a bit more up there. They haven't got much roof. So I'll sell it to them direct and they can pay me. That would be illegal under the current system, because we moved from the monopoly, the government monopoly, to mainly the big six who distribute the energy. And that system, that doesn't work anymore. So the people that are working it have been given the job to change it, but the feeling is that they really are still going to make sure that they are in the loop and that the money comes their way. So so this, hopefully this bill will get into Parliament down south, and it will allow us as a community to not have to sell our energy back to the grid, but to maybe distribute it in the village, so that basically we come off grid. And of course, that's not really what these guys want to see. So I think that's me finished now. Okay, so I'll just stop sharing.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, I just shared there's an organisation called People for Power who are organising the local electricity bill. I've just put a link to their page in the chat. So they have a petition you can sign. But yeah, I'll just open the floor to questions.
Sorry, it was a bit long and dry, that. I've put everybody asleep.
Was it useful for people? Dave, you got a question?
Yes, I was fitted with a smart, not me personally, obviously, but the house was fitted with a smart meter. Maybe I should get one. I think it's probably SMETS 1. I changed from SSE to bulb, but I don't have any access to anything smart. I still have to send them meter readings and such like. They seem to have no way of knowing, now that I'm with bulb, that I have although they know I have a smart meter, they seem to have no way of accessing it. The question is, do I need to upgrade it or get bulb or somebody to upgrade it to a SMETS 2? Would they be able to then read what I'm using? It's a personal question, it's not.
Yeah, I think bulb would be your the people to change it, because I chased all around the houses with bulb on my system when I was with them, and they had they'd somehow registered 2 meters to my name, and it meant that I couldn't actually transfer away from them. And so I tried all sorts of organizations, because there's an organization that registers meters. And so finally I got through to them, and they went, no, this is up to bulb. So I just went in one huge big circle from bulb out to all these people that I thought could help me, and all the way back to bulb again. And eventually bulb did sort it out. Now, what you've got there sounds like a much more simple issue. I think you just need to engage with bulb and say, I need to fit a smart meter. And if they don't know you've got a SMETS one or whatever it is, then they'll just organize it. And they're actually quite quick in getting them in, because there's huge government incentive to get smart meters there.
Yeah, I get that, Ken. Thanks very much. Again, personally, bulb or octopus, which do you prefer?
It depends what you want to go for. I've got an electric vehicle, so I've gone with octopus, because I get that the 5 pence cost through the night, and so I just time it to charge through the night. And 4 hours is not enough, because I've got a sort of first generation electric vehicle, and if we're just nipping into Inverurie and back again, we can charge it in 4 hours. But if the thing was empty, it would take me on that system there about 9 hours to charge it.
A question for you. So you mentioned about the price of the electricity you're using and how it varies during the course of the day. Does that have a correlation to the actual carbon cost of that energy electricity produced?
Sadly not. No, it's just linked to the wholesale energy market.
Okay.
And it's as simple as that. But
okay.
if you choose your energy supplier, they can claim to be carbon zero, but that again has to be taken with a pinch of salt, because the only way they can do that is to offset carbon. And then when you go into carbon offsetting, as we were discussing last night in our committee meeting, it's a bit sketchy. You may be planting trees in Argentina or Angola.
No, my understanding of it was that you talked about how some resources within the grid, the generation systems like the gas turbines, coal turbines, and so on, they can be switched on and off, where some of them, like wind turbines and solar and so on, not solar, but the nuclear systems are slower to be able to adapt. So they tend to be taking this base load of the system at night time. So that's when you're getting your cheap electricity typically.
Yeah, well, it's actually worse than that for the network suppliers, because the renewable electricity, it just comes whenever the weather changes. So it's that's why they need all these smart monitoring and metering and control systems, so that they can feather it. But the huge changes from these people in Scottish and Southern Energy moving from just basically putting the wires into our houses and saying that's it, and walking away and nothing else happens, to now having to trim the supply to each home. And as a group, we're actually hoping that will help us, because I think I mentioned this before, but it's using a water analogy, when I was doing pumps, if we wanted to put a pump into a hotel for the showers, then a shower would use something like 20 litres a minute of water. And so you've got 200 rooms, so you multiply that up, and that's a huge pump. And the fact is that you would never find 200 people having a shower at the same time. And so therefore what you do is you sort of trim your output to suit. But if it peaks, then you just get less power there. So so essentially, that's kind of how it works, really. I don't know if I've explained that right or not, but
Yes, thank you.
I'll just add to that, that in terms of talking about, sorry, yeah, your question was, how do you know what the carbon content of that electricity is at that time of day? There are some, because the level of electricity in the grid is quite closely monitored, and there are websites you can go on to see what the makeup of the grid is at that time. But there are, so Bulb run this thing on Twitter called the Carbon Bot, and essentially every day it publishes a little graph like this that shows you when it thinks the most decarbonised electricity will be that day, based on when the sun's coming out, what the wind's going to be doing, and things like that. And I know that Octopus run a similar thing where they try and predict what their agile tariff is going to do, which isn't the same necessarily. Well, I mean, in theory, Octopus and Bulb both sell 100% renewable electricity, although it's not as clear cut as that, is it? But Octopus do have something that tries to predict what the level of electricity in the grid is going to be, and therefore what their price will do, because their price is based on how much is in the grid.
Yeah.
And they took it one step further and wrote a little applet that you can link to your Tesla if you have one, to make it come on and charge automatically when the price drops.
Okay.
And there'll be more things like that coming through, I think.
Yeah, sure. Okay, cheers. Thank you.
Just as a show of hands, how many people have got smart meters fitted in their houses? Yeah, about 50%.
Yeah, but ours doesn't work.
It does work. The little meter they sent that tells you how much you're using doesn't work, but they are getting our readings. But yeah, cool. Willie.
I was saying, though, Bulb don't get my readings. I have to provide them. My smart meter is sitting in our cloakroom here, just doing nothing. Well, it flashes mainly green and occasionally red lights, and that's it.
So we've been with Bulb for quite a while, and I was doing the same until November last year. And I think when you go and submit your meter reading online, after that or below it somewhere, it says you can apply for a smart meter. And I did it, and yeah, the first time didn't work out because of COVID, but then within a month they came and fitted a smart meter. So yeah.
So it would appear, though, that what I need is an upgrade of a meter from a SMETS 1 to a SMETS 2, whatever they call it.
Yeah, but I think, like Ken says, maybe they don't know what meter you've got because they can't see it. So maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, okay, I'll get onto it. Okay, yeah. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, with the smart meter, it's actually quite interesting. There's kind of a flurry when you get one, because you can kind of look at your energy usage and sort of go, oh, look, I'm burning 480 watts, like as a sort of baseline for my house. And then you sort of run around and go, wonder what happens when I turn that thing off? And you go, ooh, that made a big difference. So I had one where we have some video equipment in the lounge, just things that you'd think that would be, standby would be almost insignificant. And it was burning 100 watts all the time. So our base load was like, 100 watts all day long, 24 hours a day. So that was a big change. So now just push the switch whenever we're in the room, turn it off when we come out. You also get like a Alexa plug or whatever, so you can get it to times that it comes on at certain times. You can obviously override it if you need to, but it just saves you from having that sort of base load on your house running through. And the other one we did was like going around all the light fittings in the house, and we thought we were actually relatively good because most of the light fittings were reasonably okay, but we found that some of we had some compact fluorescent light fittings in our kitchen family room. They were burning up a shed load of energy. So again, we changed them out for sort of 2-3 watt LED bulbs and so on, made a huge difference. So it's little things like that, and they are, you kind of have to make this exercise of almost bringing everything down to the lowest level and going, where am I burning energy? I can't, everything's off, you know, and you just have to try and work out where the load is. And it's things like your boiler pump and things like that. But of course, with COVID and working from home, you suddenly find that your base load is just constantly higher than you would expect it to be. You don't get any point where your smart meter goes to the green sort of zone, because you're always burning, you know, you've always got the internet on, you've got your laptop charging or whatever. So yeah, it makes it a bit of a challenge, but it's a good thing, because it makes you sort of, you know, if you keep it in a prominent place in your house, you can kind of be aware of it, and everybody else around you can kind of be aware of where they're using energy, like, oh, actually I have left the oven on, or something like that, you know.
Yeah, the next step after that is you get yourself some of these things. Yeah. They're Wi-Fi controlled devices, so you can control them from your smartphone. But with this particular one here, you can actually reprogram it to speak to your Raspberry Pi. See what I mean? So you, and then when you've got to that stage, you're not having to do things individually. You can just program it to suit whatever you want.
We actually changed it. Just as a side note to this, it's more about the energy usage. Was that we at Christmas time, my timer for my central heating went on the blink. So I got a Hive unit to be able to control it, just because I needed a new one anyway. And I thought, well, I'll try and get the radiator, smart radiator valves as well. And what I found was that, you know, I can bring the base demand of heat in the house down quite a bit, but then for the rooms that I'm in at certain times of the day and not at others, I can set up a schedule for those, instead of having them, you know, sort of constantly keeping that room warm. So we'll have like our lounge stays cold pretty much from like 10 o'clock at night until, you know, maybe 8 o'clock the next evening or something like that. It's just no heat goes in there at all. And that makes a huge difference for our energy load. So it's been really useful. It's quite expensive. I think we got a Christmas deal which was like 150 for 5 smart radiator valves, but it's a great thing. I mean, you find that the rooms that you've got, you have the heat on, you know, so you can set them up so that they're actually warm in the morning at the right temperature, but nothing else in the house is, and that's really good. So it's a big change. Yeah.
But then that technology, the cost will come down, because when we did our first home energy report here, we were given a grant of, was it £180? It was a lot of money, wasn't it? Something like £180 to change all the bulbs in our house, because you know, this is must have been about 2014, and you know, LEDs were just coming out, but they were so expensive, and £180 wasn't enough to change all the bulbs in the house. Whereas now, you know, they're just pennies.
Thanks for sharing about the Hive valves, because we've got a Hive system here, and we only got, I know you can do different zones, so you could have had 2 zones, but we didn't want to spend the money at the time. But I didn't realize you could actually change the valves on the radiator. So that's really interesting to know, because let's face it, the kitchen's always roasting. Yeah, because you've got everything in there.
Everything in there.
So it'd be quite nice to be able to adjust that.
Yeah, so like an example of that is like my office. I have I've actually moved into a smaller room in the house as well, because it's easier to heat. And I set it up so it sort of comes on at about, I don't know, 7:30 in the morning. So by 8 o'clock it's warm and the heat goes down. If I need to tweak it, I can just ask for more energy just in this house, even though it's water, you know, a wet system. I can still ask for just heat in this room, because most of the rest of the house is either, you know, down as low as it can be, or that type of thing. So you can just tune it as you need to, and you can set up so that like you wake up and maybe your shower is more important first thing, and then maybe by the time you've had your shower you want to go into the kitchen, so you can kind of set up to sort of meet that demand, and you can tune it as you go along. So different days have different schedules. So there's an app that kind of gives you a kind of a rough schedule on, you know, the individual radiators, so you can sort of see these are the sort of 5. You've got your general system, and then you've got individual rooms, and you can sort of tune each one of those. So like, for example, your ensuite, you can sort of schedule a time when you want it to kind of go off and on and so on. So that type of thing.
The one thing I really wanted for summertime was like to change the radiators to have the towel rails to have an electric sort of addition, because at the moment they only work with the hot water system. But if you get a dual system, it means you can just turn the radiator on without having your heating on. So in summer, when you don't have your heating on, you can still dry your towels. Something to sort out. It's on the back burner at the moment.
Can link them to your solar panels as well.
Yeah, I should get them too, shouldn't I? I've bought a new build, but it's one of the ones. I'm Ken's daughter. I'm down in Inverurie, but I'm in the background listening because I want to help out. But I did buy a new build, but it's a new build that got it planning permission before the planning changed, that all new builds had to have a solar power unit on it. So we've got the infrastructure in the house to put it in. We never got it when the house was built. So need to get them at some point.
So yeah, Willie's next, and it's just worth saying our next session is going to be on EVs and car clubs, and the session after that was going to be on smart homes. So yeah, we've got a Nest system, but yeah, we'll go through all the different options, and it'll be great to yeah, hear your experiences as well. Willie.
Just a quick question in relation to what Ken was talking about. You know, we've seen quite a lot, we've unearthed quite a few sort of community projects and successes, but they all sort of follow a different, you know, they prioritize different things. Presumably what's available to them. So if there's water, they might prioritize a hydro thing. But if you were looking at solar, wind, biomass, community battery systems as a community, is there a priority that would suit our community better than another, perhaps?
Good question. Yep, I think it's a good question. Well, it's one we're just going to have to kind of develop as we go along, really. And I think that's core to it, really.
Got a question for you. So you're talking about the aggregation services, which was about the local people for power, where you can effectively create your own grid. So we already have in this area a fairly large energy provider in Mackey's. Is that not something that we could look at providing for the local community directly? Is that not kind of a reasonably good sort of way of working it?
Well, exactly, but at the moment, they can't sell us.
Yeah, but when that comes about, though, absolutely, if everybody sort of makes a shout about it, yeah.
Yeah, but even better would be if we just popped our own wind generator next to theirs, just borrow a bit of land, you know.
I think they had a lot of problems getting the four that they've got in.
Well, that's true, but that's where this smart network system comes in, because essentially the fit and forget idea is that they just assume that every house is using that amount of electricity, whereas once they can monitor, because they don't monitor anything after the transformer, but once they monitor now at what we're doing with our smart meters, they can go, well, actually, you know, we've, you know, for that that entire village there, they're not actually using it, so we could actually you know, change and we'll get more houses in without upgrading the cables, but also conversely is allow more generation to go down the lines, because they're not stuffed. You know, they're at max on a bit of paper where it says each house has X, Y, Z. But once you start monitoring in real time, then you can see that there is actually capacity there.
That's why it was such a ball ache for them to do, because they got to the point where they'd maxed out the grid. It was constrained, so they had to pay whatever it was, £1 million or whatever, to have a new connection to the grid put in, you know, which is basically infrastructure.
Yeah. But I understand that when they do that, I used to work with a company called eConnect, which basically looked at all the applications for putting in energy production, like wind turbines and so on. And it's quite hard to get the grid to put in more than you're planning to put in at that particular point in time. So if you say, I'm building a wind farm today, or a wind turbine today, but I plan to put in 6 more, they're only looking at the energy, the infrastructure you need for that one turbine, not looking at the 6, because on the basis that you might not get to that point.
Yeah, so I think for me, this is where we make inquiries with SSE to say not only, because I know that, you know, you look at Orkney and how Orkney's managed, and they have this flexible grid set up where they're not only managing generators, but they're also managing demand. So, you know, up there, if the wind turbine, they're controlling generation in the wind generators, so that if the turbines, you know, are spinning or not, but then they're also controlling demand in that if there's too much electricity in a grid, they turn on their hydrogen electrolyzer and make hydrogen. You know, so in an Aberdeenshire context, you know, one of, you know, we could look at what loads that we could turn on and off, and you know, potentially refrigeration or maybe of ice cream is something that you can turn off for a couple of hours, because, you know, it's in an insulated environment, it's not all going to suddenly melt. So when we get to the right stage of knowing what Daviet wants to do in terms of installing some generation, then at that point I think we go to SSE, Flexible Connections Department, and say, you know, look, how could we do this? And yeah.
When we get onto when we do that discussion about that, I'll see if I can get Jerry Stevens to come along. He's the finance director for Mackey's, but he knows a lot about the infrastructure that they've got. So he would be really useful for that type of thing.
Yeah, he's been emailing us with loads of information about their setup, actually. Yeah,
they actually have to dump energy because they have too much heat, because they're taking heat out of the ice cream all the time. Yeah, so maybe there's an opportunity there as well.
Well, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Nick.
Yeah, and part of that sort of smart network system is the North Connect project from Norway, which is probably just about right. It's cost about £2 billion, I think, to put an electrical lead from Scotland to Norway, which was due to go online 2020, but I don't think they were near there. But then the whole of Scandinavia and the northern part of Europe share all their electricity between countries. So as their windmills fly around or other production, if Denmark has a shortage, they get Swedish electricity. And if and I think it even goes Germany, I'm not sure all the countries that are connected, but they share their peaks and troughs across demand across a massive geographical area. And we will have a plug between Scotland and Norway to do exactly the same thing, that if our windmills are not producing because we have a change in weather, but they have excess, we will be able to draw power and same back. So there shouldn't ever be lulls and surplus. It should be shared, because obviously if it goes up the way, it can be spread across other European countries too. So that, as a bigger scale system, really helps smooth out the renewables that we have. And that's a massive project that stalled years ago because of changing government, I think, in Norway. But it's a good project to help with the unpredictable nature of demand.
Yeah. Plus, if the Norwegian demand is similar profile to ours, it will be offset by an hour or so. So that would help.
Yeah.
Ali.
I was going to ask, so is one action that would be useful to do is to sign the petition for the local electricity bill? Yeah, is that something that we can do? Okay. And the other one is, do we know, is our local MP on board with that local electricity bill, or do we need to? Yeah, so they're already on board with it. So it's just about signing the petition to get the numbers out there. Okay, I'll share that on Facebook and stuff as well.
Yeah, I'll share it on the Facebook group later as well.
The guy that's running it, Matt, what was his background? He was in because he sort of spends his life lobbying.
The People for Power guy.
Yeah,
Can't remember.
I think it might have even been climate change. I mean, yeah. So he just knows which strings to pull to get noticed, which is handy.
Grand. All right. Shall we? Any other questions, comments? Should we go and get out in the sunshine?
Yep, good idea.
Great. All right. Thanks very much, everyone. And we'll see you in 2 weeks for the session on EVs and car clubs.